In this section, we're going to talk about key points that will help you to build and organize high-performance team. Each project is always about people. People are the ones who are actually to deliver a project and either succeed or fail in this journey. The very first step is always to analyze and understand roles and people you would need for a project. We will take a look about building a allocation model in a while. The next step would be is to define responsibilities. And here we are coming up to RACI metrics that will help to differentiate gray areas in responsibilities. For example, who is going to collect and approve requirements from the client, project manager or business analyst? Who is going to create and share an invoice with the client, project manager or account manager? Typically, RACI metrics is unique per each project and team. Abbreviation RACI stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, and Informed. To understand the difference between these words, let's take a look at practice example. Let's take a look at basic structure of this table. So in the left column, we have a list of responsibilities, so list of action items that should be done within a project. Then the first row has a list of roles. For example, in my case, it's like CDL Guardian, UI Designer, DLS Guardian, DevOps, etc. And here we have those abbreviations like I, A, R, C, and that's it. We can see that, for example, for the first responsibility, manage resources, allocations, and timelines, CDL Guardian just informed, UI Designer just informed, DLS Manager, he's accountable and responsible, and etc. So that's how to read this table. And right now on this example, let's understand the difference between informed, consulted, accountable, and responsible. So let's start with accountable and responsible. Accountable means like a top level responsibility. For example, you're an account manager and you're responsible to make the client happy, but you have like a project manager who is actually responsible to deliver a project. So within the project delivery RACI metrics, account manager is going to be accountable for the project, but he's not, let's say, delivering the project with his own hands, but he just owns the responsibility. While project manager, he's actually responsible. That's a person who is gonna deliver a project with his own hands. Then let's talk about informed and consulted. The informed means that you just need to inform this person about this action item. For example, manage resources, allocations, and timelines. So this task is going to be just done only by DLS manager, but you just need to inform about any change in allocation model your team members, and that's it. And let's talk about the consulted. So consulted means that exactly this role can give consultations regarding any particular action items. For example, let's take a look at this responsibility. Owner and decision-making authority of the common design language. So DLS manager is actually accountable, while UI design is responsible. So he is actually going to make these decisions. But UI designer should consult with DLS Guardian about any kind of technical decisions he's going to take. The RACI metrics can have like 100 of lines, 50 lines. The size of the matrix and the detailization of the RACI matrix is actually up to your project and up to your needs. We just need to rely on the main goal of this RACI matrix is to cover gray areas and like responsibilities as a whole. So each role would understand who is responsible for what part of the project. And a typical mistake building a RACI matrix when you make, for example, several roles to be responsible or several roles to be accountable. This is a bad practice because if we have actually more than one person responsible, it means that we do not have any responsible persons as a whole. So the main goal of this RACI matrix is that we always should have only one accountable person and only one responsible person. So they will not mix up who is exactly responsible. While we can have a case when one person can be actually both responsible and accountable. That's fine. Right now, let's take a look at example how to plan team allocation model for a project. There are the following pillars required to be able to properly build allocation. Understand project timeline, understand project budget, define roles and number of people based on the estimation, and assign people to the roles. And now let's take a look at real-world example how to build allocation model for the project delivery. Let's imagine we are to build a small corporate website for the client. And let's say I got a signed contract from my account manager with the following details. I know that we committed to deliver a project to the client within 6 weeks. I know that we are to involve the following roles to deliver the project, and they are senior project manager, business analyst, senior UX designer, front-end developer, back-end developer, senior QA engineer, and DevOps engineer. Then I also know how many hours we planned to spend per each role to deliver a project. So we have 30 hours for project manager, we have 40 hours for business analyst, 65 for designer, 125 for front-end guy, 92 for back-end guy, 60 hours for QA, and 40 for DevOps. Then also to control the budget utilization, we need to understand the rates, so the cost per hour, and so then we can also calculate the total costs we're gonna spend per each role. We just multiply rate per amount. We just multiply rate with amount of hours, and we just get the total cost per role. And here, for example, we know that the total budget of our project is, so right now we understand that we know all of these 4 pillars, and we just need to then plan when and how exactly we are going to utilize these hours. So for example, I plan to utilize 5 hours of project manager time equally just within the whole project timeline, just to spread it equally. Then for business analyst, I understand that just first part and a bit more of the project are going to be active for him, because if it's a building website, so it means that business analyst will have sessions with the client to get the requirements, to then create and fill in tickets for developers, for designers. And I need him to complete his work as soon as possible, and then he can just leave the project, and just project manager will just cover last 2 weeks of the project. We can go with our business analyst. So senior UX designer, I also understand that we would need to have designs as soon as possible. So for example, I plan that within first week, business analysts can start gathering requirements, and by the end of first week, designer can already start preparing some kind of sketches, mock-ups, and then within second and third week, start already confirming these mock-ups and sketches with the client, and start designing those approved sketches. And for example, we plan that we need to get the designs approved and ready for development within first 3 weeks of the project, and then we can just let designer go once all designs are approved. And the most interesting part here is actually how we also allocate development, engineering part of our team. For example, we understand that the first 2 weeks are gonna be just very high level, when people are just gonna get the requirements, talk about some kind of design stuff, etc. So we might not need even neither QA guys, no developer guys, no DevOps guys. So the first 2 weeks are going to be mostly like about talking and filling in some requirements. And once also we're coming up to the third week, so we already start getting more or less filled in tickets, some kind of sketches and mock-ups for developers. They can already start joining the project and start implementing those tasks. And for the QA guy, for example, we understand that QA guy is gonna validate only the built-in features, and the built-in features are gonna be available for them to be tested only at least after the first week of the developer's work. So QA guys are gonna join us since the fourth week of the project only. There could be also variation. For example, to be honest, in my projects, I typically allocate developers since the first weeks and QA guys also, even if I understand they will not have work, because I just want them to be in the context of the project. For example, how it can work. Here, like 40 hours, I can reduce, for example, to 30 hours, and I can add 5 hours here and here just to make sure front-end developer will join calls and communication within the first 2 weeks of the project also, because there could be cases when business analyst might have questions, technical question to a developer, or designer might have a question to a developer. So that's why, even if you understand that there is no active, let's say, development work, it's better to have all delivery team at least on the calls, so all of them are going to be in the context. The same about other roles. You can just, for example, cut 10 hours for backend for QA guy here, and let's say just add 3 hours equally for first 3 weeks. Also, at least he can join the calls, he can hear the context of the project, so it would be easier for him just to test the product he's gonna be also develop. So, and here's just a basic logic. I wanted to show you how to build a real allocation model. Once the allocation model is built, you should also think about confidence in expertise of your team members and if you might have potential risks. There could be different risks, but typically it goes about performance and availability. For example, you hired a new developer to the project, senior level, but you have no idea if he is good or not in practice. So you as a project manager should have a plan in your mind how to measure performance and be able to take decisions on time. There could be also a case when a person can leave your company or be switched to another project. So you as a project manager should also have a plan in case you need to swap resources. Balance among junior, middle, and senior roles. Project manager's dream is to have top stars and senior team only, but in reality teams consist of different seniority levels. Best practice is to have at least one senior per work type. For example, you can have one senior developer and two juniors, one senior designer, one junior designer, etc. The logic is that juniors should always have senior guys behind their back for oversight. Otherwise, if you have a team that consists only of juniors, middles, you will face a problem with the quality. For example, here's a typical team for software project we are doing in the current company where I'm working. Architect, responsible for application architecture. Developer lead, responsible for implementation approaches and takes any decisions during implementation. Senior developer and other developers. For example, one senior designer and there could be other junior designers. One senior quality assurance guy, plus there could be also junior and middle ones. One senior BA. If we actually can assign only middle or junior, then we always add allocation of BA practice lead for oversight. So we do not allow junior or middle to work in a solo. And of course, we have a project manager and account manager assigned to the project. Track team performance. Tracking performance is an inevitable part of project manager responsibilities and project delivery. Project manager should regularly track performance to be able to understand if project goes according to the schedule or not. There could be two levels of tracking performance: team performance and individual performance for each team member. So let's take a look at a real world example how to track and report team velocity. This is actually like a real example from one of my projects I have run like several years ago. And we have, for example, a general diagram that is built based on actually these numbers, and it shows velocity of my team in story points. So exactly this approach is based on measuring team velocity in story points. So we have a list of sprints here in the first column. Then we have original story points we have taken into work for a sprint. For example, during sprint planning, as we mentioned previously, yeah, we are getting agreed with the team what kind of tasks we gonna deliver within the sprint. And we can see that within sprint 26, we got agreed to deliver 25 story points. Within sprint 27, 48 story points, etc., etc. Then the second column is actually removed story points. So in some sprints, of course, we haven't completed some tasks, and it means that in the very end of the sprint or within a sprint, it could be also the case when you deliver a project, then you understand that this tasks is going to be removed and from sprint 26 and it's going to be moved to sprint 27. So in any case, this table just means that some tasks with story points were removed from this sprint against of the initially original planned to be completed. Then the next column shows added story points. It shows the amount of story points, so actually like real tasks we have added already for a sprint that was in progress. For example, we have already started a sprint 28. We got agreed to deliver 39 story points, but somewhere in the middle of the sprint we added one more task that costed us 4 story points. And the last column shows us the burnt story points, actually really delivered amount of story points by the end of the sprint, by definition of done. And based on these figures, we build this general diagram that can actually visually show you and very easy to understand and see just the dynamics of your team velocity, and you can your management, your client can easily understand how you're performing. For example, you can see that we started with the team only with 25 story points. Then you can clearly see that the velocity actually on average increased, and like the average velocity gained around like 35 story points somewhere there. I didn't calculate, to be honest. But like visually, yeah, around like 35, probably 40 story points. And actually we can see also these columns here, like original story points. Then you can see visually how many story points have been removed. For example, in this sprint you can see that we have removed a lot of story points. And actually this could be also a good case for your analysis. For example, okay, why this happened? This could happen due to the bad sprint planning. For example, you might just overcommitted here in original story points, and it could be like a good lesson for you and for the team not to overcommit in the future. Or there could be like a serious change in the priorities of the features, or a lot of bugs appeared and you had to spend a lot of time for bug fixing. So like all of this data is a good like food for reflections. Then you can also see like burnt story points. So green column actually shows what actually you have delivered. That's the most valuable column for you here. And you can also see like a yellow one story points that you have added somewhere in the middle. And like it's just split by sprints, and we have like a scale of story points and amount of sprints here. So this way it's really, and how I actually so this simple approach can allow you to track the team velocity visually, and moreover it will allow you to take a look at the sprints that have already passed retrospectively and understand how you performed in past, how you are performing right now, and you can easier plan the velocity somewhere in the future. Right now, let's talk about individual performance. You might need to understand how each team member perform for different reasons. In general, there are two main criteria: quality of work and ability to complete tasks according to estimations. Let's take a look at examples. A developer has estimated a task to be completed within 8 hours, but instead of that completed it within 16 hours. And when quality assurance guys and when QA guy was testing the completed task, found 5 bugs, and it took 4 hours more to fix them. This example shows a bad performance. Firstly, a developer spent twice more time than estimated, and moreover, spent 4 hours to fix bugs, while a normal percentage of time that could be spent for bug fixing is around like 10-15%. If you spend more, then there is a good reason to investigate and understand why exactly. If we talk about performance of QA guys, we can measure in percentages of bugs they miss because their main goal is to find bugs. The lower percentage of missed bugs, the better quality of their work is. If we talk about business analysts, you can measure quality of user stories prepared for grooming in percentage. I believe it's pretty hard to create like a common methodology to estimate individual performance. That's why I would like just to share some principles, key principles that you can just take and implement into your project delivery. On practice, it's typically about checking if tasks are completed within estimated time, if quality is good and have reasonable amount of failures, and if communication is on a good level. To investigate individual performance, I typically create a thread in Slack, for example, where I put down notes daily about tasks completed, upcoming, and deadlines, plus some notes. And typically 1-2 weeks allows you to accumulate essential layers of information just for analysis retrospectively. Right now, let's talk about motivation of your team. Motivation and relationships are inevitable part of managing team. A team cannot perform well if they're demotivated or have bad relationships. I have been managing different teams for already 15 years, and I would like to share some key principles that help me to keep team spirit and atmosphere on a good level to deliver projects successfully. There are two types of motivation: financial and non-financial. I believe that financial motivation goes first. I know a lot of people say that non-financial goes first, but I believe that's not true. People come to work firstly to earn money to pay their bills. Therefore, a person should get salary adequate to the market. I mean that non-financial motivation can work only if a person gets a required salary to cover his daily needs. As for non-financial motivation, I've come to conclusion that the most important for people is to have a comfortable working atmosphere, and they would be ready to get even lower salary but stay with you if they feel comfortable. And I would like to share several key points I use inside my teams. Number one, protect your team from excessive stress. For example, if a client complains, no need to overstress your team and transfer client's emotions on the team. I faced a good case when an excellent specialist decided to quit the job and domain as a whole right after he was asked to regularly communicate with the client. So project manager should shield his team from stress as much as possible. Number two, take leadership and know details of what you're doing. There are always situations when you have to take key decisions in what directions should team go, and project manager cannot hide behind team's back and just put all responsibilities on their shoulders. Team always appreciates when project manager has expertise and background in subject areas and can talk about solutions deep and not just schedule calls and ask, okay, how's going? For example, we have to set up an additional quality assurance environment, and you cannot just wait for the DevOps to set everything up, but you can lead the process. For example, create a list of action items for DevOps and then just confirm with him if it looks good. Talk about tech details of implementation. Show your deep interest and expertise. This way, team member can see in you not just a project manager who sets tasks, but also a person who leads him, has expertise, and share challenges you are going through together. Of course, to do that, you should know your area well and have proper background knowledge. For example, I have technical background and I know how engineers appreciate when I can talk with them on their language and understand details of pros and cons of some implementation. By the way, exactly that's why I have prepared a separate technical awareness course for project managers and business analysts to learn how software works under the hood in simple words. So if you want to increase your technical background, you can take a look at that course also. Number three, the next important piece to create a good atmosphere is to value and appreciate team personal time. It's not okay regularly ask people to work after their labor hours or during weekends. Of course, they could be force majeures, but it cannot be on a weekly basis. Number four, proper communication. This topic can be a separate full course, but I just want to highlight that people appreciate if you talk to them in a normal way. Even if you're a boss, you do not have to shout or abuse it. If you have a negative feedback, it should be always done in a constructive way to talk about the problem, reveal reasons, and build a plan how to improve that. Number five, next, next method that works is to build personal relationships. I don't mean you have to become friends and go to a dinner to your colleagues every Sunday. I'm talking about small talks about family, kids, some hobbies. For example, I have noticed that my QA guy bought a watch Garmin, and I know that's an expensive tool for hiking, and I like hiking myself. So we can talk about common interests. This way, you can create stronger relationships. The next method is regular one on ones with your team members. This approach works fine if you have regular teams and the goal of the call is to talk to a person, for example, on a bi-weekly basis for 15 or 30 minutes and ask how is he doing? Just talk about different topics, not only about work. The goal of the call for a project manager is to analyze how a team member is doing, as you may get a lot of useful information. If a person is going to leave your company and you need to prepare a change, or his kid is just sick and exactly that's why he's just missing on deadlines. And the last point is to avoid micromanagement. Micromanaging refers to the act of trying to control every aspect of a task, how it is completed. This is a way to nowhere for you as a project manager and for your team. You will just waste your time and your team will get irritated also. I would like to close out this section with some useful insights regarding building high performance team. Number one, don't allow your team to burn down. If your team is burned, it's very likely you will lose either all team or some part of them. People might even not leave the company, they will just continue working with low performance. So, you should always control temperature, and sometimes it's better to allow people to go and rest on Friday so they can work better since next week. When to fire? It's not always easy to understand if a team member should be already fired or changed, and you might want to give one more chance. There is a typical trap when you give one chance, then second chance, then third, more and more, while you're spending budget and time for the new attempts. Typically, 3 attempts is enough to understand if team member performs well or not. Of course, this is very individual and a lot of factors should be taken into account, but I want to give you my example from real project when I had to change a developer. A developer worked simultaneously with 2 different projects, and both of them he regularly missed deadline without any adequate reasons. Didn't pay attention to details of tasks, and like 30 or 40% of tasks have been done with many defects. And the last failure was with the research task that he failed while he was given 3 attempts. And as a whole, there was no trust to continue working with the developer, and we had to make a change. Therefore, if you understand that you do not trust a person anymore, that's a strong signal for a change. 2 full-time works. Right now, remote work is very popular, And this creates essential amount of cases when people work on 2 and sometimes even 3 full-time works at a time. Without doubt, this affects performance as a whole. And the best marker for that is if a person cannot regularly join calls or very picky for a call time, then it's definitely a good reason for deeper investigation. Plan allocation model smart. For example, your project starts in a week and you know that firstly you will prepare a design and get the initial requirements within first 2 weeks. So you do not need to have full-time developers and QA engineers within first 2 weeks not to burn project budget. Soft skills are going first during hiring. Right now, there is a tendency to pay attention firstly to soft skills and then to hard skills only. Project delivery is a team game, and if you even have an engineering genius but with low soft skills, the whole team work can become a hell. That's why soft skills started playing more crucial role. Don't forget to include vacation and holidays into your allocation model. I know I have already mentioned this during the previous sections of the course, but I would like to highlight once more that if you have a team of 10 people, and simple vacations, holidays, and sick leaves and day offs can significantly affect timeline for 1 year project. Thanks for watching this section of the course and see you in the next section. Cheers!